She announced, "You need me too much, but I'll forget you in a week," loud enough to humiliate me. I didn't argue. I walked away, cut contact, and rebuilt my life elsewhere. Weeks later, her career, reputation, and backup plans collapsed while I thrived in silence. My fiancée of 8 months dumped me at her best friend's engagement party in front of everyone on purpose. I'm Lucas, 32, work as a senior marketing manager at a tech startup here in Los Angeles. My now ex-fiancée Gabrielle is 29 and runs a wedding planning business while building her lifestyle blog on the side. She's always chasing that perfect aesthetic for her Instagram, the kind of content that makes other women feel inadequate about their ordinary lives. We met 4 years ago through mutual friends at one of those Venice Beach networking events that nobody actually wants to attend. Those first 18 months were genuinely great. She brought spontaneity to my structured world, and I think I gave her the stability she craved but would never admit to wanting. We complemented each other in ways that felt natural, effortless. I helped her build that business from nothing. Spent weekends coding her website while she sketched mood boards on our kitchen table. Sat through countless client meetings when demanding brides tried to squeeze every detail out of her contracts. I designed her logo, set up her booking system, even helped her negotiate vendor relationships when she was too nervous to ask for better rates. I believed in what we were building together, both professionally and personally. We had just bought our place in Venice Beach 18 months earlier, split the mortgage down the middle, and had been planning our own wedding for the spring. She had this vision of a sunset ceremony at El Matador Beach, something intimate but Instagram-worthy. I was handling the logistics while she focused on the aesthetic details, which felt like our natural division of labor. Here's the thing, though. About 10 months ago, Gabrielle reconnected with her ex, Shane. He's this freelance videographer, the kind of guy who posts cinematic shots of golden hour in Malibu with captions about living authentically and following your creative passion. The type who uses words like storytelling and visual narrative in casual conversation. Gabrielle said they were just collaborating on content for her business, that his visual storytelling would elevate her brand to the next level. She showed me his portfolio, which I had to admit was impressive. Clean compositions, that dreamy film quality that makes everything look like a luxury advertisement. She was excited about the possibilities, talking about how video content was the future of wedding marketing. I didn't love it, but I trusted her. We had 4 years of history, an engagement ring, a shared mortgage, and wedding plans in motion. I wasn't going to be the insecure fiancé who couldn't handle his partner having professional relationships with other men. That felt beneath the foundation we had built together. But then the comparison started creeping in. Little comments at first, delivered with a smile that made them feel like observations rather than criticisms. Shane would have captured this sunset differently. Shane knew how to really live in the moment, instead of always planning everything to death. Shane understood the creative process in ways that corporate people just couldn't grasp. When I brought up how uncomfortable these comparisons were making me, she flipped it back every time. I was being insecure. I was too controlling. I was stifling her artistic growth. She had this way of making me feel like my concerns were character flaws rather than legitimate relationship boundaries. So I backed off. Because the last thing I wanted was to be that guy, the controlling fiancé who couldn't handle his partner's professional growth. I trusted the foundation we had built over 4 years. I trusted the ring on her finger and the mortgage we shared and the life we were actively planning together. The subtle shifts started happening around month 6 of their collaboration. She began staying late at planning sessions that stretched into dinner, started talking about Shane's approach to life philosophy, his views on conventional relationships, his thoughts on how most people settle for security over passion. She'd come home energized in ways that felt different from her usual work excitement. I started noticing she was less interested in our wedding planning. When I brought up venue tours or tasting menus, she'd get this distant look and change the subject to her current projects. She stopped wearing her engagement ring to creative meetings because it didn't fit the aesthetic Shane was going for in their content. 3 months ago, everything came to a head. I got offered a position as marketing director at a promising startup in San Francisco. Significant title bump, 40% salary increase. The kind of opportunity you don't see twice in this industry. My current company had been struggling with funding, and this felt like the perfect time to make a move that would set us up for the future. But when I mentioned it to Gabrielle, she completely broke down. Not just disappointment, but full panic. She cried and said she couldn't build her business if I abandoned her now, that everything we had worked toward would crumble, that her wedding planning was hitting its stride, and she needed me to be her anchor. She talked about how my steady income was allowing her to take creative risks, how my support was the foundation that made her entrepreneurial dreams possible. She made it sound like taking the job would be a betrayal of everything we had built together, like I was choosing career ambition over our partnership, over the life we were creating. The guilt was overwhelming, so I stayed. I literally called the San Francisco startup back the next day and declined, told them I had personal commitments in LA that I couldn't walk away from. I watched that opportunity go to someone else, someone who didn't have a fiancé, begging them to choose love over career advancement. I told myself it was the right choice, that relationships required sacrifice, that building something together meant prioritizing the partnership over individual opportunities. I should have seen what was coming, but I was too invested in the narrative we had built together, too committed to the idea that love meant putting the relationship first, even when it felt like I was the only one making that choice. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago. Her best friend's engagement party, this beautiful rooftop venue in West Hollywood that Gabrielle had planned and styled herself. It was a showcase of her work, with every detail carefully curated for maximum Instagram impact. Cascading florals, Edison bulb lighting, a backdrop that looked like something from a luxury wedding magazine. All her industry contacts were there, our mutual friends, basically everyone in her professional and personal orbit. She was in her element, networking and taking photos for her Instagram stories, positioning herself as the creative force behind the event's aesthetic success. About an hour into the party, she pulled me aside near the bar area, where at least 15 people were mingling. Her demeanor had shifted from the bubbly hostess mode into something I had never seen before. There was this cold calculation in her eyes, like she was about to deliver a line she had rehearsed. "Shane and I are reconnecting," she said, her voice pitched just loud enough that conversations around us started to pause. "You're sweet, Lucas, but you're not passion. You're safe, but that's not enough anymore. I'll forget you in a week." The words hit like ice water. I could see her gauging my reaction, waiting for me to make a scene, to give her the dramatic confrontation she seemed to want. Her best friend turned around mid-conversation, champagne glass frozen halfway to her lips. A few industry contacts exchanged horrified glances. Someone's conversation just stopped entirely. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Everyone within earshot was watching, waiting to see how I would respond to this public execution of our 4-year relationship. Gabrielle had chosen this moment, this audience, this level of humiliation deliberately. She wanted witnesses to her liberation. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I looked at her for a long moment, processing the calculated cruelty of what had just happened, then said simply, "Noted." I walked out of that rooftop party without another word, got in my car, and drove home to the apartment we shared, my mind strangely clear despite the emotional devastation. I want to say I fell apart, but honestly, I just went numb. The shock was too complete for immediate emotional processing. I spent that entire night packing my essentials while she was presumably still, at the party celebrating her liberation or whatever narrative she was telling herself. I moved methodically through our shared space, taking only what was mine, leaving everything we had bought together. By Sunday morning, I had moved my stuff into a storage unit and crashed at my buddy's place in Santa Monica. By Monday afternoon, I was on the phone with that San Francisco startup, asking if the marketing director position was still open. The hiring manager sounded surprised but pleased. They had been having trouble finding someone with the right combination of strategic thinking and hands-on experience. I blocked Gabrielle on everything: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Spotify, because I didn't want to see her activity or accidentally encounter our shared playlists. I removed my name from our shared accounts, contacted our mortgage broker about my options for the Venice Beach place. 10 days after that rooftop humiliation, I was on a plane to San Francisco with my career and my self-respect intact. The startup had moved quickly once they confirmed my interest. They needed someone who could hit the ground running, and frankly, I needed the distraction and the fresh start. San Francisco has been incredible for rebuilding my sense of professional identity. The startup environment is intense but energizing in ways I didn't expect when I was comfortable in my LA routine. I'm working on marketing campaigns that are actually getting industry attention, real buzz in the tech community that extends beyond our immediate circle. My new boss, who runs marketing across 3 portfolio companies, pulled me aside after my first month and said my strategic approach feels both innovative and grounded, that I have this rare ability to see the big picture while managing execution details that most people either can't handle or find too mundane to care about. The work itself is challenging in ways that remind me why I got into marketing originally. Before I started viewing my career through the lens of how it supported someone else's dreams, before I became so focused on being the stable foundation for Gabrielle's creative ambitions that I lost track of my own professional growth, I joined this creative collective in Soma, where marketing professionals and designers collaborate on experimental projects. It's been eye-opening to work with people who view marketing as a creative discipline rather than just a support function. I'm remembering skills and interests I had set aside to focus on being the practical partner, but the real breakthrough has been therapy. I probably should have started years ago, but I always told myself I could handle things on my own. My therapist has this way of asking questions that make me realize how much I was accommodating and excusing, without even recognizing the pattern. Like when Gabrielle would criticize my lack of spontaneity, but then expect me to handle all the practical planning and financial stability that made her spontaneity possible, or how she would dismiss my concerns as insecurity, but demand complete emotional support for every setback in her business. I'm starting to see the whole relationship differently now, not just the end, but the entire 4-year trajectory. How many times I adjusted my expectations downward, made myself smaller to accommodate her vision of who we should be together. It's a relief mixed with an anger I didn't know I was carrying. The therapy sessions are helping me understand that what I thought was love was actually a pattern of accommodation that had become so automatic I didn't recognize it as unhealthy. But here's where it gets interesting. About 6 weeks after I moved to San Francisco, I started hearing things through the mutual friend network. People were reaching out, ostensibly to check on how I was doing, but really they wanted to share what was happening back in LA. Apparently, Gabrielle's wedding planning business is struggling in ways that go beyond normal seasonal fluctuations. Those creative directions Shane brought to the table, turns out his cinematic vision sounds amazing on a mood board, but creates logistical nightmares in practice. One client went 35% over budget because Shane insisted on this elaborate video setup that required additional permits, insurance, and structural assessments for aerial drone footage. The bride's father, who owns a construction company, reportedly lost his temper when he realized the artistic vision hadn't accounted for basic safety regulations. Another wedding ran nearly 3 hours behind schedule because Shane wanted specific golden hour lighting conditions that didn't account for actual event timelines. The reception venue charged overtime fees, the catering had to be completely restructured, and the band threatened to leave. The bride ended up in tears, not from joy but from stress. She's lost at least 3 major clients that I know of, including a celebrity wedding that would have established her in the high-end market. One of them apparently told her that her previous work had been much more professional and organized, which I'm trying not to feel vindicated about, but honestly, it's hard not to. The business consequences weren't just about Shane's impractical ideas, though. Word travels fast in the LA wedding industry, and Gabrielle's public humiliation of me at that engagement party didn't go unnoticed. Several vendors mentioned that professionalism extends to how you treat people in your personal life, and that kind of calculated cruelty raised questions about her character. Then the screenshots started circulating. Someone leaked messages from a group chat where Gabrielle had been venting about our relationship months before the breakup. I only saw them because a mutual friend felt I deserved to know what had been said behind my back. One message said something like, "Lucas will never leave. He's too stable and invested. He needs me more than I need him." Another was her laughing about how predictable I was, how she could count on me to handle the boring parts of life while she focused on her creative vision. But the most damaging one was her discussing my San Francisco job offer with these friends, calculating whether she could manage me, staying versus letting me go and finding someone with more passion. She had literally been strategizing about my career decisions like I was a business asset rather than her partner. Her industry contacts saw those screenshots. Suddenly, she wasn't just the innovative wedding planner who made bold creative choices. She was someone who viewed her fiancé as a tool and mocked him behind his back to her friends. The comments I heard secondhand ranged from disappointed to disgusted. Meanwhile, Shane's true nature was becoming apparent to everyone, not just Gabrielle. Turns out he was running the same playbook with multiple women while doing these creative collaborations. He had an actual fiancée in Seattle and another woman in Portland he was calling his creative partner. Both relationships overlapped with his timeline with Gabrielle by months. The Seattle fiancé found out through overlapping social media posts, where Shane had used the same locations and even similar captions for content with different women. When she started digging deeper, the Portland woman reached out after recognizing patterns in his communication style. They all discovered each other basically simultaneously through a combination of detective work and coincidence. When confronted with evidence of his multiple relationships, Shane just vanished. Deleted his Instagram, shut down his website, completely disappeared from the internet without explanation or apology. Gabrielle was left holding the aftermath of his deception while dealing with the business consequences of their failed collaborations. She had restructured her entire business model around his creative input, turning down traditional clients to focus on his vision of elevated wedding cinematography. About 8 weeks after I moved to San Francisco, she started trying to contact me, first through email, which gets automatically filtered to a folder I never check, then through alternate Instagram accounts that I blocked as fast as they appeared. She got mutual friends to reach out, asking if I would be willing to have a conversation, telling them she was struggling and needed closure. I held firm on no contact, but the messages people were relaying painted a picture of someone in complete crisis. She had to give up the Venice Beach apartment because between the lost business income and Shane's expensive creative requirements draining her savings, she couldn't afford the mortgage payments anymore. She's apparently staying with her younger brother now, which can't be comfortable given how her family feels about everything. Her parents, who had always been kind to me, were reportedly mortified by how she had handled the breakup. Her father, a traditional guy who valued treating people with respect, was particularly upset about the public humiliation aspect. Then her father reached out via LinkedIn. I almost didn't open the message because I figured it might be another plea on her behalf, but his tone was completely different. He sent me this note that basically said he was sorry his daughter had humiliated me in front of everyone, that I had been the best partner she ever had, and that he hoped I was thriving in San Francisco. He didn't say it directly, but he implied that Gabrielle wasn't welcome at family gatherings right now, that her behavior had embarrassed the family and violated their values about treating people with dignity. That message hit different because her dad is this old school guy who doesn't get involved in relationship drama. For him to reach out meant she had really crossed a line, even with her own family. It confirmed what I was beginning to understand about the scope of the damage she had caused to her own life. 2 weeks later, her younger brother reached out directly. I almost didn't open the message because I figured it was another plea on her behalf. But something about the subject line made me click. He had found Gabrielle's project journal, one of those expensive leather planners she always carried for business strategy and personal goals. She had left it at his place during her move, and he was packing her remaining stuff when he stumbled across pages he thought I should see. What he found changed everything I thought I knew about our relationship. There were pros and cons lists comparing me to Shane. One column had things like stability, financial security, useful skills, dependable, mortgage contribution. The other had passion, spontaneity, aesthetic value, social currency, creative inspiration. Under my column, she had written detailed notes like, stay with Lucas until wedding season stabilizes, then reassess options, and L's steady income allows creative risks. There were calculations in the margins about what my San Francisco salary offer could have done for her business expansion, complete with projections for how much she could save on living expenses if I was earning more. Most devastating was a budget worksheet titled Transition Timeline. How long can Lucas support move to full-time content creation? She had literally calculated how much she could extract from my financial stability, while minimizing her own risk, treating me like a business investment rather than a life partner. Her brother sent me photos of these pages with a message saying he was disgusted, that he had always liked me, and felt I deserved to know I had been deliberately used. He didn't want to show their parents because it would devastate them, but he thought I had a right to understand what had really been happening. I stared at those photos for probably an hour, part of me already knew, if I'm being honest. The way she reacted when I first mentioned the San Francisco opportunity, how her affection always seemed to correlate with her business stress levels, how quickly she pivoted once she thought Shane could offer something I couldn't. But seeing it written out in her own handwriting, seeing her quantify my value as a resource rather than a partner, crystallized everything. I wasn't her fiancé. I was never her fiancé. I was her safety net, her financial cushion, her emotional insurance policy. 3 months after moving to San Francisco, my professional life was thriving in ways I hadn't expected. I got promoted to marketing director with my own team of 5 people. The campaigns I've been working on are getting industry recognition, real buzz that extends beyond our immediate startup ecosystem. My boss mentioned that my strategic approach has helped land 2 major client accounts that had previously been out of reach. I also started dating someone. Her name is Diane, she's 32, and she's a documentary producer I met through the Creative Collective. We've been seeing each other for about 3 months, taking it deliberately slow and actually communicating like adults about expectations and boundaries. She knew the whole backstory before we even went on our first date. I had learned from therapy about the importance of being transparent about past relationship patterns. Diane had been through her own difficult divorce 2 years earlier, so she understood the importance of healing time and the value of building something genuine rather than just filling a void. Last weekend, I went back to LA for a wedding. One of my former colleagues was getting married in Manhattan Beach, and I had RSVP'd months before everything exploded. I honestly considered backing out, because I didn't want to risk running into Gabrielle, but Diane convinced me that showing up living well would be more empowering than hiding. We flew down Friday night, and the wedding was Saturday evening. Beautiful ceremony, great reception. Everyone from the old office was there, catching up and congratulating me on the San Francisco move. Several people mentioned they had heard about my promotion and the successful campaigns I'd been running. I was genuinely having a good time introducing Diane around, feeling completely comfortable in a way I hadn't expected. Then I saw Gabrielle across the room. She was there as someone's +1, someone I barely knew from the extended network. She looked different, thinner, tired. Her hair wasn't styled with the usual perfection she always insisted on. She was wearing a dress I recognized from 2 years ago, which for someone who prided herself on always having the latest aesthetic was telling. She spotted me at the same moment. I watched her face cycle through shock, panic, hurt, and then something like desperate determination. Before I could even process what was happening, she was walking over. Diane squeezed my hand once and then gracefully stepped toward the bar, giving me space, but staying within sight. I appreciated that instinct, that trust. Gabrielle stopped about 2 feet away from me. Up close, I could see she had been crying recently. Her makeup was covering it, but not well. "Lucas, please," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I need to talk to you. I ruined everything. Shane screwed me over completely. My business is falling apart. My family barely speaks to me. I see now that you were the one who actually mattered. You were real, and I threw it away for nothing." She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. People around us were starting to notice, probably remembering the engagement photos she used to post constantly. I took a breath and said very calmly, "You told me at that engagement party that you'd forget me in a week. Turns out that's exactly how long it took me to forget the person you pretended to be." Her face crumpled. "That's not fair." I was confused and scared, and Shane was manipulating me into thinking I needed something you couldn't give me. I made a mistake. Don't you believe in second chances? I believe you showed me exactly who you are when you humiliated me in front of everyone you knew. I believe you used me for 4 years while keeping an exit strategy in your back pocket. And I believe you're only here now because your backup plan didn't work out. Someone behind us gasped quietly. Gabrielle looked around wildly, searching for sympathy, but found none. She whispered, "I really did love you." I didn't argue, just said, "Maybe you did, in the only way you know how. But that's not enough, and it's not my problem anymore." She left immediately after that. I heard later she called a rideshare while crying in the venue's lobby. Diane came back over once Gabrielle was gone. She didn't ask what happened, just handed me a drink and stood next to me until my hands stopped shaking. I realized I already had closure before that wedding. Seeing Gabrielle just confirmed what I had already accepted. Some people only value you when they're losing you, and that's not love. Gabrielle once said I was forgettable. Turns out the only thing forgettable was her version of love. The real thing, what I'm building now with people who value me, that's what actually lasts. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.